All right, Mayor of Kingstown season 3 is a wrap. This is a teaser for the whole season, so I really won't have anything spoilery in it. And I don't think I'm going to spoil anything major, so I'll try to stay away from that kind of stuff. But for me, Mayor of Kingstown season 1, I thought was great. I thought it set everything up. The main character, played by Jeremy Renner, who kind of coordinates the criminal justice system and the local police and all these different prison dynamics to keep order in this little town of Kingstown, played out great, culminates with this massive chaotic riot, which is, oh, it's crazy, right? Season 2 is a major step back because it got so caught up with like the Russian mob stuff and all these different weird deaths that were like shoehorned in the middle of everything. It's just really strange and odd, like how it was all put together. It was still pretty good. It had some elements and things that were very contrived, and I was very bored by the Mike saving Iris. She was this prostitute, and it's kind of like she's here, she's there, she's here, she's there, and Mike never sleeps with her. He just is taking care of her. It's basically his pet project, much in the way his mother had pet projects through the system. Now, season 2 culminates with a big cliffhanger. Well, not really a big cliffhanger. It culminates with a lot of violence and chaos. Now, if you haven't watched all that, this is a bit of a spoiler. So, it involves a shooting and the death of his mom. Now, she's the matriarch that's kind of grounded everyone in Kingstown. She has her feelers out for trying to do good in the women's prison and teaching and all these different elements that kind of keep the show sort of grounded. And without her, I feel like season 3 takes away her benevolence. And this is a show that just makes me hate everybody. I no longer care for Mike. I no longer care for the police. Everybody, actually, the police and Mike are worse than they're the bigger problem at this point now. I don't understand because everything that was orchestrated has turned out bad. Like, why do we keep listening to these people? So, season 3 does a lot more of that and doesn't go well. So now I'll get into the trailer footage and I'll get into some spoilers and things like that. So if you don't want to watch it, but feel free to let me know what your thoughts are if you're interested in a show like this or not. So before I get too far away from it, let me just praise Jeremy Renner. He's just fantastic. He's totally believable. There's not even an ounce of doubt that he's playing and living this character. I mean, it's perfect. It's so perfectly done. Well, that said, the star of the show is still Bunny. Now, there's a lot less Bunny in season 3, yet Bunny is the only one who kind of is at least consistently trying to do what's right from his perspective. Now, I will admit he has a lot of ambitions that create some of the conflict in the season. He wants to spread his wings, right? Spread his empire and all of that. And that kind of leads to some conflict. They get a hold of some uh, high grade military guns and he kind of gets aggressive. He hits areas where there could be civilians and things of that nature, but that's not the basis of his character and where it's grounded. And Mike is the only saving grace because it wouldn't have made a lot of sense to have Mike turn everything back over to the way it was and things like that because the other characters and the other pockets of groups are all just even worse. Like it's unbelievable. So another element that's kind of just tired is his on again relationship with the DA. She is still off-putting, kind of more so in a way. He can just keep doing what he wants to do, and she's going to turn a blind eye. That kind of comes to a head in the season. And I got to be honest, as the audience member, you're agreeing with her. You're like, okay, enough is enough. Like, it's completely out of control, Mike. I don't care what you say. No one's going to protect X, Y, and Z. So this is the new Russian mobster guy, Constantine. He really, really is a letdown. This season starts where he's very menacing and creepy and eerie. There's a hit, there's some violence, there's some things that happen early in the season, but by the end of the season, he's just a drunk drug addict who's just it doesn't make any sense. Like this dude is gets so wasted at times. How would not one of the other men just take him out and not replace him? Like it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. There's none of this, don't use your own product rule that happens in crime circles. So totally hated this character by the end of the season. And speaking of hating characters, here's one you're supposed to hate. He ultimately becomes the head of the AN. He comes from the outside into the Kingstown prison. He has ties to Mike. We're supposed to feel like this is sort of like preferential treatment for Mike, pulling strings, whatever. He ends up just sort of kind of being a red herring. Like you're supposed to kind of see him as the season's real villain. He partners with the Russians at one point, but then there's a hit on him and he survives, but he doesn't survive. What's going on? Very very much like I'm not sure I felt like they had this mapped out for the whole season. It just seemed like it was very uneven. You're supposed to hate him, which is fine, kind of how you feel. You don't really shed a tear, obviously, when things go sideways for him. I will say that that scene where they try to get to him with the grenades is probably one of the best sequence of the entire series to date, outside of like the prison riot and some things like that. Okay, you can really not see him well. This is the only shot I think in this trailer where you get a shot of Robert there on the right. Robert has been the villain of all 3 seasons. And it kind of felt that way early on, and they go after him, they try to kill him. He ends up basically just being a monster at the end of season 1, just murdering the innocents. That sort of becomes this guy's motif. Now they wrangle Mike's brother into Kyle wanting to join SWAT, and that's kind of the backstory for Kyle in this season. And it kind of plays okay. Kyle's exceedingly skilled, so they kind of have a great couple moments that kind of give you a taste of that. But Robert is a complete reason to hate police. Like it's so extreme. I don't know how you come away with anything else. And actually, Robert is the reason that most of Kingstown can't be held together. And then when Mike's always trying to go out of his way to protect SWAT, protect Robert, do whatever, he's like in the inner circle, even at the end where he's like obviously gone off the deep end. And the season culminates with an episode 10 shooting that involves Robert and Kyle and all these different factions that come together in conflict. And I got to be honest, I came away disappointed. That's all I'm going to say. I came away disappointed. And it's one of the worst elements of the show because of how it makes me feel. So the season has some elements with the women's prison. This is Kyle's wife. She's a nurse at the women's prison, and they kind of get into other social justice issues. It kind of extends a little bit about Marion's work from the first 2 seasons. So she's become the new torchbearer, if you will, for at least that conversation. But the female warden is so off-putting. Like she's just barely in the season, and it's just like, oh. So none of this makes you feel good about anything as well. It just also just layers and layers of just that cruddy, yucky feeling that you kind of have inside about how bad things actually are. So all in all, it's Jeremy Renner's show. It's not a horrible show. I still like it more than most shows, but this show just makes me dislike the police. This show makes me dislike the prison system. This makes me dislike everything about criminal law and how things actually operate and how we manage these people and treat them like animals and lie to them and abuse them and set them up and put them in. It's the I didn't even get into the Ian thing. There's a serial killer thread that deals with Ian. Again, like if we're going to muddy the villains and the police and the so much, then I don't know what you come away with. It almost it's just it got too, it's almost too heavy handed. Like you, everyone is bad. Like who at this point I leave season 3, and I'm like I don't know who to root for. Like I don't know who I'm supposed to be rooting for. I got a couple of names, but even then I'm like, well, but they don't really matter in the grand scheme of the show. And Mike has this big so long soliloquy that kind of encapsulate the season finale. And basically, it's just him basically saying I'm an animal and I'm always going to be an animal. And I'm like, this is just awful. Like, so I'm assuming there'll be a Mayor of Kingstown season 4. I hope they get more on track with Mike trying to do good by keeping order, by getting them to be better versions of themselves, which I don't know if that was really clearly defined, but it kind of felt like that in season 1. And then it got dramatically away from season 2. And a whole bunch of villains were kind of revealed that you didn't even think really should be villains. And now this police officer, this police, it's just a mess. So that's my take on it. Some of you have seen it, some of you guys won't, but let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. I'm Pops.